Hi, this is Bob Scully, and welcome to another edition of the World Show, Entrepreneurs, the Langbari series. If you've been following the Entrepreneur series, you know that all entrepreneurs have certain characteristics in common. They are courageous and intrepid in the face of risk. They have a good sense of humor. They're very determined. They can stare down a banker before he stares them down, and so forth. But they're also highly disciplined and concentrated and focused, almost obsessive sometimes. They will follow one goal that leads to success and forget about everything else in the picture. And they're right to do that. This week you're going to meet an entrepreneur who came to North America with just a few bucks in his pocket and a suitcase, the classic story. And he decided that he would become the best in the world at doing one thing, and only that thing, nothing else. And he stuck to that plan. And it worked beyond his wildest imagination. And it all started with a loan from his then girlfriend 40 years ago, who's still around. She's the wife, and she's thrilled at the way it has turned out as well. Here is Felix Furst of Canplast. Felix Furst, the Canplast story is a great story in itself, but the Felix Furst story just before that has a nice romantic tinge to it. So I want to start with that. With the lady who became your wife. But first, let's go back to Switzerland. You left Switzerland, a well-functioning country for the economy and entrepreneurs, but you left. Why?
Well, I sort of was limited in Europe to get into business because you need capital in Europe. You need proof that you have money, otherwise you can't start a business. And I was thinking, well, I was 23 years old. What can I do? I said, well, let's go and see.
Go west, young man.
Go west. Originally it was USA, but I couldn't get a visa into USA. So closest was Montreal. So I ended up in Montreal.
With 2 suitcases and $500.
That's it.
And I want to get to your, before we get to the company, to your then, as you say, then girlfriend, who became your wife of 40 years. It's nice. She saved you there.
Well, she knew that I was a hard worker, and she believed in me. And at that time, we didn't talk any marriage, but I said, well, can you loan me $500 or $1,000 to incorporate the company? And she said yes.
Wow.
So, but she got
a lot of money in those days.
I know, but she got paid back very handsomely. So
you gave her shares, right?
I gave her shares, yeah.
And it turned into a great marriage.
Absolutely. We have a lot of fun together.
And let's talk about what Canplast does, because we, in this series, we often come upon the invisible economy, things we all need, but we don't realize somebody has to make them until we run out of them. What does Canplast do?
We specialize in making edge banding. Edge banding is used to cover the edges of exposed particle board when you manufacture a kitchen cabinet, office furniture or home furnishings. You cut the particle board and then your edge is exposed. So you put edges from Canplast on, which comes in rolls. It's being applied automatically by the manufacturer. The manufacturer doesn't want to get involved in that, so that's why he doesn't want to make edge banding.
That's odd. You would think if somebody is able to manufacture everything but the edge, that they'd finish it up and do the edge.
Well, you got to know where it's coming from. I mean, before we were using high-pressure laminate like Formica, and they had to cut the strips off the Formica sheet and then make the edges. Or they used paper etching of polyester, but didn't come in rolls. So as the business developed over time in the 70s, Germany mainly and the Italians have developed machines to apply the edges automatically, meaning the roll is unrolled, there is glue being put on and then pressed onto the particle board, and then you have your finished piece of furniture.
And it has become a specialty, it's an industry.
Absolutely.
On itself.
Yeah.
And you noticed, this is the entrepreneurial aspect, you noticed that it wasn't very well done a generation ago. It was paper.
Yes.
And how did you notice that?
Well, when I worked with a plastic company in Montreal, they were in T moldings, you know, the moldings where you have a T and you press it into the particle board. And I became sales manager of that company very quickly. So I started to visit all the furniture guys in the Americas, United States and Canada, So I knew what the business was all about. At that point, I saw the option of making edge banding out of plastic. All there was is formica and paper stuff, and with a fingernail you could break it, so
Yeah.
it wasn't good. You can't break it anymore with plastic, so
And it made everything else look cheap if it's paper and it gets ripped off.
absolutely, yeah, yeah.
But to do that required capital. You needed extrusion,
I needed extrusion,
and you met a Mr. Cohen, I think,
Mr. Cohen, yeah, yeah.
who was a kind of a benefactor, mentor.
Well, no, he was a guy I knew from the business side of it. But at that point, I didn't have any money.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to dig deep to go to banks and etc. But the fun part of it is that company who was buying T-molding wanted to automate their process and go into automatic edge banding. And they gave me a substantial order, and with that order I could go and get financing.
And they actually did it on spec in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
You were the first client. It's that mythical first client.
Yeah.
But what did Cohen gave you a price, I think, as I read it.
Well, from Cohen, I mean, I went to the bank and said, well, it was a little bit of a swindle, but I want to buy a car. So they gave me $5,000, and then after that I went to at that time was the National Bank, was the BMO. I said, I've got contracts for orders, I've got some money here, $5,000, I need a credit line. So they gave me a credit line.
So you leveraged for the car payment.
That's right.
But you didn't buy the car.
Yeah. And then I needed machines, and I had a credit line, I had $5,000. I went to at that time it was Federal Development Bank, BFD today, and they loaned me money to buy some machines. But I didn't have a complete line. I mean, I have winders, I have application machinery I could make with the $50,000 BFD gave me, but then I needed an extrusion line, but I didn't have enough money. So I rented the extruder from Cohen.
Ah, that's it. Yeah.
By the hour. But soon I took up pretty much his capacity, and I wasn't my own boss. I had to rely on them, which I didn't like, so I bought my own extruders afterwards, and then the whole thing
just exploded.
Yeah,
but the timing was perfect, I gather, because
absolutely.
it was needed,
Yeah.
and nobody else was doing it.
Yeah.
Why not? There's another.
Well, it's such a small market. I mean, at that time the market was maybe $20-30 million. Today it's maybe $200 million in the Americas. But I don't know. It just it jumped to me and says you can make this out of plastic.
And from your first client, how did you do your marketing? Did you had to cold call, knock on doors? Nobody knew you.
No, I contacted all the machinery guys who were selling these machines. They're called edge banders, okay? To see to whom they sold machines. So I had my prospect list, and I called them up one after the other. And I had my first conference at the Kitchen Cabinet Association. I made a speech there in front of 1,000
really?
presidents.
Yeah.
And that's where the whole thing went off.
I'm sure that you scored.
Yeah, I scored.
And all these people in the room had never realized you could do it this way.
No,
plastic
not really, no. And then I guess the biggest hit was at the show in Louisville, Kentucky. It was a woodworking show where all the edge banders were exhibited. And on every edge banner there was a big sign on it, Can't edge banding processed here.
You had a lock on it.
So we were on the map at that point.
And is that the time, more or less, when I've read that you wrote in your shaving mirror, $1 million, this was your goal, and you had stared at it every morning as you were shaving?
Absolutely, yeah.
But
Stared at me every morning.
Were you sure you were going to get there?
I had to. I mean, I had no choice. I had nothing to lose. I didn't have anything.
Or everything to lose in a way, if it had failed.
Yeah.
And at some point, you locked up the whole market in North America?
Yeah. Pretty much, yeah.
And nobody tried to come in, because the barrier to entry is high, but not that high.
Well, technological, it was a challenge, okay? I mean, I don't have an engineering degree. I'm a Bachelor of Commerce. But with help from machinery guys and who built all the equipment to specs, I could succeed. The extruder was, of course, you can buy it online from an extruder company, but not the other equipment. It's not readily available.
And when a company grows that fast and things are going not too well, because there's no such thing, but when things are going very well, there too there's a pitfall. You run out of capital.
Yeah.
And the banks don't always follow you. How did you get over that hurdle?
Well, our profit margins were extremely good.
Yeah. So you self-financed?
Yeah, absolutely. I was on my own. After we shipped the Cuban contract, we paid all our debts off. So.
Was this the communist regime in Cuba?
Yeah, it was communist, absolutely.
But they needed edge bands, obviously, like anybody else. And they paid well?
Letter of credit. Irrevocable letter of credit.
And is that what led you to Latin America? But that's an interesting expansion because a lot of people would have thought, Europe, Japan, the developed world, so to speak. But you went to Latin America.
After we built up America, yeah. So once I put up a plant in the Carolinas, we had to protect our American interests because we were 80% dependent on the Americans. So putting up a plant was a major hurdle, and so we could identify ourselves as Americans. And then came Mexico, and after Mexico, South America.
And I think you were in North Carolina, which kind of I thought makes sense because I don't know if it was the case then, but it's now the furniture, the hub, I guess.
It was the furniture hub, not today anymore,
but it was then.
It was then, yeah.
And did you? I believe you did have because this is almost like a fairy tale. It's perfect. You did have some labor troubles at some point.
Oh yeah. That I guess was a difficult moment for me. We had a strike, the 84s, and we expanded just too much, too quickly and too much. We added 6 production lines within a year, and the labor got unsettled. I didn't have contact with everyone anymore, so we had a strike, 6 weeks. So I had to drive a lift truck. So.
Oh yeah?
Absolutely.
And so you wanted to wait it out?
Well,
you didn't want to cave in?
No, I didn't want to give in. But at the end, they didn't win, we didn't win, so...
Nobody ever does?
No, it's a lose-lose situation.
And you strike me as somebody very perfectionistic. You must have blamed yourself. When this situation blew up, did it come as a surprise?
Yes, it came as a surprise. I could fight it out once, but the second time they succeeded in getting a union in.
You initially, did you get on a bad footing because you didn't want a union?
Oh, they knew it, that I didn't want a union, okay? But came everything a bit together. They learned that I'm building a plant in the United States, so they were immediately scared. They were well paid, I mean, that's not the question. And they had regular raises, they had bonus and everything. But you have one poor apple in a pile and it's spoiling the soup,
All you need, I think, is 5 signatures or something just to get the process going.
Yeah.
And then you're not allowed to stop it. You're not allowed to interfere.
There's no way.
Did you return to good relations when it got all signed? Did cordiality return or did it leave?
Well, it never returned the same way. We had a body-body situation before, and afterwards it was there were no more bonies, no more overtime. This is the rule. You want to have a union, it's the way it's going to be.
And that wasn't so hot for them either. That's the thing about these situations. Nobody does win.
No.
And in South America, it's interesting. You've been to a number of countries. That's not even though everybody says that's where we ought to go because it's the new world and it's the hemisphere. Not that many companies take that risk. They don't trust the business climate that much in South America if they're not from there. But you never had that problem.
No, I mean you gotta walk before you run. Okay, I mean the first container is COD, pay me in advance.
Yeah.
Second container 50% down, and 50% in 30 days. And if that works all right, I give you terms. And it worked.
There was enough goodwill on the other side.
Absolutely, and they saw they can make a buck with our product because it was underdeveloped in South America. They still applied by hand. There's no automatic machines. Today it has changed, of course, but at that time it was a money-making thing.
And you were selling, I guess, to distributors who then resold themselves, resold the product.
All through distribution. Everything.
And how important is craftsmanship? You are perfectionistic, and you in your rules of success, you have a great bit. I must compliment you on this great business plan. It's got 4, and it fits in the pocket like a credit card. It's great because a lot of these plans are like mission statements, interminable. But one of your goals, one of your 4 goals, is don't diversify, specialize, and be absolutely the best.
Absolutely.
So craftsmanship plays a role, obviously, in this. Furniture is important. People like it to be perfect. How did you instill that in the culture of the company?
Well, the culture of the company is not only the business plan, but the key element is do it right the first time. Okay, and our business is a precision business because we had thousands of printing cylinders, and printing we have 4 or 5 color prints. Extremely important that you reproduce the same thing every time, every week. Give you an example. We made 50 new color matches a week for customers who send us a panel. And if the color match is perfect, then you have a little variance in production, but not too much.
But if it doesn't match, you've got a very unhappy buyer.
You've got a claim on your hand.
Yeah, and you feel bad too, and you look bad.
Oh yeah.
But you must send quality control people out because it's such a vast territory here. We're talking about the hemisphere. How can you be sure at the other end? Because your brand travels with you. When you send something, it's your brand that's on the line. Do you have quality control commandos?
In-house, yeah, in-house. The line producer, they had absolute authority to shut down a line if it wasn't right. And there was certainly quality control there as well. So every coil is basically measured to size and to color before it goes out.
And to apply that rule, don't diversify, do one thing and be the very best, that requires a lot of discipline, because when you start to have success, people approach you with acquisitions, with new products, and you're making all this money and you think, yes, I should do something, I should grow the business. You resisted that. You were very disciplined.
Well, it's like the Swiss tunnel vision, But yes, I mean, I didn't want to go make packaging foils and all that stuff. I mean, you're just not concentrating on your core business anymore.
And therefore, you probably created confidence among your customers.
Absolutely. Today we have competitors that do all kinds of material in plastic, but the core business that we had, they don't have that.
So you're still leading the market.
Well, don't know today. I sold my business in 2004, but it was a leading brand, of course.
And you never had low-cost, the problem of low-cost competition, especially from China, but not only. That could have happened. This is the kind of thing where you could imagine it would happen. It didn't.
No, it didn't, because it was a very, very time-consuming and reactive business. Means a customer sends us a panel, he needs a color match next day for approval, and then 2-3 days later he wants an order for 2 million feet.
Because he sold a house or whatever.
So yeah, that's especially the Americans. I mean, so we had to react extremely fast, and the Chinese couldn't do that.
And you sold, as you just said, in 2004.
Right.
But I asked you before the interview, I said, that's funny, you don't look like the kind of guy who would want to sell. And then you said, yeah, but I kept the distribution.
Yeah.
So how did you structure that?
Well, at the time, at Canplast, I still was already partner in a distribution business. We were selling Tefisa panels, particle board panels with melamine on top. So it's the same industry that I was in. And I became major shareholders 2 years ago. So I bought the whole company then at that point.
But you didn't regret selling. It's like almost like a reverse takeover. What you sold came back to you, or not?
No. One is a distribution. One was a manufacturing business, the one I sold. But the distribution business was a customer of Camplast at that point.
I see. Okay. You prefer that to the manufacturing.
It's less trouble.
But being a perfectionist, you must blow up sometimes, no? Do they do it as well as you?
Of course.
You pick up the phone?
Yeah, I pick up the phone. But no, but we trained them. We hired a couple of Camplast people, and I sent them to the Toronto plant to show them how to make edge banding. So.
And your wife must occasionally make jokes about the preferred shares. I mean, she lucked out. You're right. It turned into a great partnership in more ways than one. Is she sometimes surprised at how well it has gone?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She never dreamt of being in a position we are now. So.
Well, good. And I'm sure there are many more surprises that lie in the future. So, viel Glück.
Danke.
Und vielen Dank. Ja?
Danke.
Bitte. Felix Furst in Entrepreneurs, the Langbari series of the World Show. Mr. Furst was thrilled, by the way, when he found out he was part of the Langbari series, because as it happens, he knew George Langbari Sr. personally. And we are paying tribute, as you know, to George Langbari Sr. with this series, and also with quotes from Fred Langen's excellent book, The Survivor. And so I'm going to turn to that. You will recall that George Langbari Sr., from one of the most prominent families in Hungary, survived indeed, the Nazi invasion of Hungary, the Soviet invasion of Hungary, and then a lot of economic toil before he became the most legendary insurance man in Canada. And so, page 87, we pick up when he leaves Britain for Canada. George Langbari spent most of his savings on the airfare from London to Montreal. He landed with just a few $100s in his pocket. Since he had a doctorate in political economy from the University of Budapest, he thought he might teach at McGill. Recognizing foreign qualifications is still a problem in Canada, which is why newcomers with PhDs and engineering degrees drive taxi cabs, and things were even worse in 1951. I went to McGill, and they handed me a mop and pail, says George with no bitterness. Once again, he made a parable about what was in reality an insult. The way he sees it, they probably did him a favor. That is how he made ends meet, working as a janitor, cleaning up the faculty club at McGill. George then saw an ad in the newspaper looking for people to sell vacuum cleaners door to door. It was his first introduction to the world of the cold call. There was some prejudice in Montreal against new immigrants, especially those with an accent, and it was easy to slam the door in their face. However, it paid more than McGill, and George needed the money. One evening, when he and Truda were out on an after-dinner stroll in downtown Montreal, George looked up at office windows in the Sun Life building, then the tallest office tower in the British Commonwealth. Every one of those offices needs a vacuum cleaner, said George, ever the optimist. He soon became the top vacuum cleaner salesman for Rexair, not just in Montreal, but for all of Canada. A real winner. He just could not be put down, and indeed, he would go on to become this living legend in the world of insurance, beating all the records. And that is from Fred Langen's excellent book, The Survivor. And now, here's something else coming up on the World Show.
Business is a microcosm of the world. And in the world, in any walk of life, whether it's journalism or business or politics or home life, in any walk of life, you have people who are respectful and courtly and mannerly, and you have people who aren't. And I just think that is the way of the world. People are people wherever you find them. And in business, you find all kinds of people. You find psychopaths and you find courtly, mannerly people. It was a very difficult couple of weeks. And I have to tell you, for a moment, you know, the spokespeople for the board gave me the option. Actually, they requested that I write the press release myself and say that my ouster was my idea and I had chosen to resign and it was time to move on. And, you know, I was tempted only for a moment because it wasn't the truth, but I was tempted for a moment because I knew the press would be so terrible because we chose to tell the truth, which is some members of the board decided to fire me. So, but you know, the truth is always the best answer, and so we went with the truth. But it was a tough 10 days in the period between Davos and getting fired, and it was a tough 10 days after that as well. It was a very tough time for my family and my friends, tougher in some ways even than it was for me. But You know, the other thing I've learned, and I try and say this in the book, as difficult as that time was, and it was very difficult, there is a gift in everything. There is a gift in everything. And I received many gifts during that difficult period. The gift of all of the people who reached out to me, from presidents and kings to employees to people of long ago and far away. That was a gift, that people reached out to find me. Yes, to find me and to tell me that they admired me and to tell me that I'd made a difference in their life. That was a gift. And I wouldn't have gotten it without that happening. So,
Felix Furst was our guest this week on Entrepreneurs, the Langvarre series of The World Show. I'm Bob Scully. Have a great week. Thanks.